On Sunday, the Washington Mystics posthumously inducted Nikki McCray-Penson into the team's Hall of Fame, and Washington Mystics beat writer at The Next, Jenn Hatfield, is here to recap the touching ceremony and discuss McCray-Penson's legacy. Jenn will also provide a Mystics injury update, as well as discuss where the team's playoff hopes stand and the importance of Ariel Atkins' contract extension.
Ogunbowale for the win!
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball.
Hello and happy Tuesday. You are Locked On to Women's Basketball. I'm Natalie Heavren, and I'm a features writer and the Atlantic 10 beat reporter for The Next. Thanks for making Locked On Women's Basketball your first listen every day. And remember, Locked On Women's Basketball is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. Today's episode is brought to you by Bird Dogs. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA or promo code LockedOnNBA for a free white tech hat with any purchase. You won't want to take your Bird Dogs off, we promise you. Today, we'll be chatting about the Mystics inducting Nikki McCray-Penson into the team's Hall of Fame, which injured players have returned, team's playoff hopes, and Ariel Atkins' contract extension. Joining me today is The Next Washington Mystics and Ivy League beat writer and managing editor Jenn Hatfield. If this is your first time listening to Locked On Women's Basketball, we at The Next have over 100 reported pieces every single month. We have a beat reporter on every single WNBA team, so get that YouTube subscription up to make sure you catch when every episode drops, and you can support us by subscribing to The Next, $9 a month, $72 a year at thenexthoops.com. So Jenn, last month, as we know, Nikki McCray-Penson passed away, and Mystics announced that she would be inducted into the team's Hall of Fame. On Sunday afternoon, you were there live to witness the induction. Starting off, even prior to the Hall of Fame ceremony at halftime, how did the Mystics honor McCray-Penson, who played for the team from 1998 to 2001?
Yeah, so kind of the first visible sign of things came over a week ago on August 13th, when the Mystics started wearing small patches on the shoulder of their jerseys that said Nikki number 15. So they carried that through Sunday's game, continuing to wear those. And then, on Sunday itself, Eric Thibault in his pregame media availability wore a retro Mystics teal and bronze T-shirt, which was a nod to the era that McCray-Penson played in. There was a decal on the court. There were warm-up shirts that the entire team was wearing, and that opposing head coach Latricia Trammell of the Dallas Wings also wore during the game in what was a very nice touch. There were these black warm-up shirts with McCray-Penson's 15 and a breast cancer ribbon honoring, symbolizing the disease that took her life. So she was kind of everywhere throughout the arena. There were highlight videos interspersing that era of clips with some of the Mystics' current team, just little reminders everywhere.
And can you take me through the ceremony? Who spoke and what did they say?
Yeah, so the MC for the day was the Mystics' longtime play-by-play announcer, Megan McPeak, and she did a great job of just getting through everyone. So remember, this was a halftime ceremony, so the Mystics had actually worked it out with the Wings to give them a little bit of extra time, have halftime take a little bit longer than it usually does, but you quite literally don't have all day, so it needs to be a well-organized performance, and McPeak did a great job. So they showed a video that was narrated by Donne Staley, who is McCray-Penson's former teammate on Team USA. And then we heard remarks from a couple of the Mystics Hall of Famers who were inducted last year in their inaugural class, including Muriel Page and Shamiqua Holtzclaw. And then after that, Mystics general manager Mike Thibault spoke briefly, and then with the help of McCray-Penson's 10-year-old son, Thomas, a banner was unveiled in the rafters showing all of the names of the Hall of Fame inductees.
What were some of the highlights? I know we were talking offline about a couple stories in particular from that ceremony.
Yeah, so really everyone who spoke was great, offered very, they got emotional, but offered great stories. It was challenging. It was bittersweet, as current Mystics guard Brittany Sykes said post game. The entire current Mystics team, or at least most of them, were sitting on the team's bench, kind of in the shadows, watching, which was kind of a cool juxtaposition of old and new there. But to answer your original question, Muriel Page, the Mystics' true original, the first player signed by the franchise. She told a very funny story about how at the team's old arena, which is known today as the Capital One Arena, but then was known as the MCI Center, after practices, Paige would stop as she drove out of the parking lot. She would stop her car and start signing autographs. And her teammates would say in practice, Muriel, you're holding up the line of cars, we're all trying to get out. But what she said she was doing was just making sure that players like McCray behind her and Holdsclaw, who were the team's 2 stars, that the fans could get all their autographs. Paige joked, they don't want my autographs. They used to thank me for making sure that I could get Nikki McCray's autograph. So that was just a really wonderful story, And then Holdsclaw talked about growing up. McCray-Penson was a few years older than her, and just how Holdsclaw saw who McCray-Penson was at Tennessee and wanted to be like that, and eventually became her teammate and was kind of still following her around a little bit. But they were the team's 2 stars, and in something that reminded me a lot of Brittany Sykes and Natasha Cloud, who've been starring for the Mystics lately with all these injuries. Holdsclaw talked about how she and McCray-Penson could get on each other, really hold each other accountable, and then go to dinner, later that day as if nothing happened. So a lot of really good, personal memories, some jokes, some fun nicknames. It was just a really heartfelt ceremony, especially by those 2 speakers who were live and who were her teammates. Mike Tebow spoke briefly, but really wanted to put most of the attention on, the alums, the teammates, and that experience.
I know McCray-Penson, after she passed away, there were several Mystics fans that came to the game that day in her jersey. What was the fan response like Sunday afternoon?
Yeah, pretty similar. It was a sellout crowd. It was clear that they wanted to honor McCray-Penson. There were several vintage jerseys and shirts in the arena, many of them for McCray, but not all of them. I definitely saw a Holdsclaw jersey or 2. I even noticed one person got the 2023 edition of the Mystics Black Rebel jerseys, but with McCray-Penson's name and number on the back, which seemed particularly sweet. They were respectfully cheering. I don't think they were like, they weren't ear splitting, but they were very reverent, let's say, as the banner came down and the crowd rose to its feet, and it wasn't deafening, but it was, they understood the magnitude of the moment, and they understood this bittersweet feeling. Their only inductee this year is someone who is not able to be there. And it was I think everyone in the arena was very touched by the ceremony.
And what legacy do you believe that McCray-Penson left, not only on the Mystics organization, as we saw Sunday afternoon, but the women's basketball world as a whole?
Yeah, so briefly with the Mystics, and then branching out, with the Mystics, she was on the Mystics' first team ever. She was one of those first players in DC. That era of team, they weren't the best on the court, but they captured the fans' hearts. And a lot of the current season ticket holders, have been season ticket holders for a long time. Some of them saw McCray-Penson play, and they're still here, and they remember her. And those early years really hold a special place in fans' hearts even today. So there is that enduring impact of just the memory of seeing how she played, which was, really hard-nosed and just full of energy. So, and then, on the game as a whole, she was part of that 1996 Olympic team that really kind of captivated a nation, in some ways led to the birth of the WNBA, or helped it at least get off the ground on surer footing. And after she retired, she went into coaching and was helping to build up the next the next generation of players. She won a national title as an assistant coach at South Carolina. She's just been all over the landscape. Eric Thibault, the team's current head coach, talked about this pregame too, even saying, my career would look a heck of a lot different if McCray-Penson and her contemporaries hadn't been so dedicated to making the WNBA a success. It's hard to overstate what she did for the game. And, Mike Thibault too talked about how sad it is that her career got cut short by breast cancer, because she was on the way to being a coaching star in addition to the playing star she had been.
Thank you for such a detailed breakdown of that. For anyone who wasn't watching the ceremony, if you can go find it, I highly recommend it. But Jenn will also be publishing a piece with sights and sounds, which she always does so well from that ceremony as well. Coming up next, Jenn will break down which injured players from the Mystics have returned and what impact they've been able to make so far. Today's episode is brought to you by Bird Dogs. Summer is here, so it's time to pull your Bird Dogs out of your closet. Bird Dogs are a stretch khaki short that are designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and leg and give you a truly sculpted look. They do all the same things as Lululemon shorts, but fit even better. They also fit way better than regular shorts that are made of a stiff, restricting cotton. Bird Dogs fixed this issue by inventing a cloud knit fabric that looks like khaki, but stretches, so you get a way slimmer fit without having to sacrifice movement. Even better, Bird Dogs uses anti-stink, sweat-wicking fabric that keeps you cool and dry all day long, which is so important, especially in the warm summer months that we're in the middle of. Bird Dogs are so great. I've bought them for my fiance, my brothers, my dad. They all love them and say they're much more comfortable than stiff cotton shorts or pants. So go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA or enter promo code LockedOnNBA for a free white tech hat. That's birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA or promo code LockedOnNBA for a free white tech hat. You won't want to take your Bird Dogs off. We promise you. Thanks for making Locked On Women's Basketball your first listen every day. Everydayers, stay tuned this week for more from me. Can you quickly recap, Jenn, quickly might be a bit difficult, the last 2 months of injuries for the Mystics?
I will do my best. So this whole saga started in late June when Kristi Toliver was shut down due to plantar fasciitis in her right foot. And then about 5 days later, Shakira Austin suffered a hip injury, a hip strain, late in a loss to the New York Liberty. So those were kind of the first two dominoes to fall. Then 5 days after that, so now we're on June 30th, Elena Delle sprains her ankle literally in the last 30 seconds of a game against the Atlanta Dream. She's out for about a week, comes back and re-sprains it within the first half of play. And then a game after that, on July 11th, Ariel Atkins also went down with an ankle sprain. So if you caught all that, that's roughly a 3-week span where 4 players went down with injuries, and 3 of those are regular Mystics starters. And one of them is the 2-time league MVP. So that was quite rough, and they were all out until just recently, starting to come back on August 13th. So that's a month where the Mystics had several hardship players coming in, needed players like the aforementioned Cloud and Sykes to step up, and we're just, kind of trying to hang in there.
So before we get back, or we go to what impact they've had in their return, how did those injured players continue to impact the team while not on the court?
Yeah, just their presence and their leadership. All of them are leaders in different ways. Kristi Toliver is literally an NBA assistant coach. So even when she can't play, she is a huge voice for them on the bench. So is Elena Delle, so is Ariel Atkins. And, just their presence when they could even be at practice and just shoot. The mood sometimes felt lighter when they started traveling on road trips, even when they couldn't play. The Mystics talked about how refreshing it was to have a big travel party again. So just their presence, being able to point things out to a teammate or say the same thing that the coach is saying, but in a teammate-y way, can't be overstated.
And so as we stand now, gearing up for the end of August, with a couple weeks left in the regular season, who has returned?
Yeah, so it kind of depends on how you define returned. It depends whether you say returned at all, are still playing. So I'll try to describe this briefly as well. So Shakira Austin is the first to come back on August 13th. And then Ariel Atkins and Elena Delle returned a game later, last Friday, August 19th. The issue there is that Elena Delle suffered a hip injury. It was something that Eric Thibault said had kind of cropped up while she was rehabbing her ankle, but had been under control enough for her to play. And she just kind of irritated it when she came to a stop at some point in the first half of that Indiana game. And they just shut her down at halftime, out of an abundance of caution. And she missed Sunday's game, but is questionable for tomorrow's game, Tuesday, against the Connecticut Sun at home. So she is kind of, we don't have a firm timeline on her and when she might play. So she is, her prognosis is kind of cloudy at the moment, but the ankle is good to go. It's just a matter of how that hip feels and how it's healing. Eric Thibault did say it is nowhere near as severe as Shakira Austin's hip, which should be some relief for Mystics fans. And Shakira Austin played in 2 games and missed Sunday's game in what they're calling return to play protocols. So for Mystics fans who were around last year and saw how the team managed Elena Delle returning from back surgery, it's kind of a similar feel. The Mystics have looked at the schedule and mapped out when Shakira is best suited to play and when she should probably take a rest day to avoid overtaxing herself. So she missed Sunday for that reason, but is probable to go on Tuesday. And then Ariel Atkins has been off the injury report Sunday and then again for tomorrow's game, and is, working herself back into rhythm, but appears to be good to go with that ankle. No concerns at this time.
So when they've been on the court, what has their impact been, and how have the Mystics looked reintegrating so many key pieces?
Yeah, so that's the major challenge for them right now is, they kind of adopted a new style of play with those players out. They played faster. They kind of had to, they relied more on their guards, Sykes and Cloud in particular. Tiana Hawkins stepped up in the front court. And now they're having to figure out, how can we make sure that we get Elena touches, but don't completely slow down our offense to do it, because they do like playing fast when they can. How do they keep sharing the ball, but make sure that players like Shatori Walker-Kimbrough and Maisha Hines-Allen and Lee Meng continue to stay aggressive just as they were with those 3 starters out. So it's a process. All 3 players have looked to varying degrees of rusty coming back in, which if they didn't, they'd probably be robots. That's to be expected. And, as you see them play, they get more and more comfortable. Shakira looked more comfortable in her second game than she did in her first, and said as much in her post-game media availability. Ariel Atkins looked much more comfortable on Sunday than she did on Friday. She had I think it was 12 points in 17 minutes on Sunday. So, they're all still under minutes restrictions. We don't know exactly what those numbers are, but they are going to be limited for a while as they work their way back in. And, hopefully those minutes restrictions continue to rise as their comfort rises, and they get that rhythm. And by the time that the playoffs come around, they're kind of all cohesive again and comfortable in the fully healthy version of the Mystics. And hopefully that includes Kristi Toliver as well. But, it's kind of interesting. They're in this almost preseason mode where everyone's still kind of figuring out how to play with each other again, because it's been a whole season, or you got some new pieces in free agency. But instead, the Mystics just took 6 weeks away from some of their best players and are now remembering how to do it. Brittany Sykes shared a kind of funny story after Shakira Austin's first game back. I noticed that those 2 were really talking kind of animatedly after a couple stoppages. And so I asked Brittany, what were you guys talking about? And she admitted essentially that Shakira had called out some defensive coverages as the post player behind Brittany Sykes. And Sykes kind of just shrugged her off and was like, nah, I'm not doing that, because she wasn't used to playing with Shakira Austin, who is an elite defensive player in only her second year in the league, she wasn't used to playing with Shakira behind her anymore, and playing with Shakira behind her makes her do different things than when she doesn't have that elite shot blocker, rim protector, mobile big behind her. So Shakira kind of called her on it and was like, hey, you got to listen to me. Like, I got you. And Brittany was like, okay, like, I got it. I'll readjust. So that was just like one example of how they're figuring each other out in real time again.
And how have the injuries impacted the course of the season? I know our Lucas Seehofer has an injury tracker that has provided invaluable information throughout the season.
Yeah, goodness. You can't really overstate how big these injuries have been. The players and coaching staff like to make a point of saying that the injuries aren't an excuse. They think that they have enough talent to be winning games even without 3 starters. But let's face it, that is a hard ask for any team in the league to be down 3 starters and be successful. And Lucas's data bears that out. The Mystics have lost 7.9 win shares due to injury, which is essentially like estimated wins if we simplify it, a great deal. That is far and away the most in the league. And that's through today, Monday. And the next closest team is the Chicago Sky at 4.7 win share. So 7.9 to 4.7. Injuries have been huge for the Mystics, and not in a good way. They're 15-17 right now. In the preseason, they were projected to be one of the top teams in the league. They're not quite there yet. And I think injuries are a huge reason why. If they were healthy, I think it's pretty indisputable that they would be above 500 and in much better playoff position, but so it goes.
Well, that leads us right into the next segment, where we'll be talking about the Mystics' playoff hopes, where they stand now, as well as Ariel Atkins' recent contract extension. So as you just talked about, Mystics' playoff positioning, they're 3-7 in their last 10 games, but they remain in 7th place and still within playoff contention with 8 games left to play. With the team's remaining schedule, do you think the playoffs are still in the cards for the team?
Yeah, I do. I think they're going to figure it out. I mean, getting players back, yeah, it's hard to reacclimate them, but it's harder to be without them the rest of the year. The Mystics love this problem compared to the alternative. So I think you'll see as in particular Shakira and Ariel continue to get comfortable, and we'll see what happens with Elena and Kristi. I think they're going to start getting more results, start getting more consistent, especially on the defensive end, where they were elite early in the season before all the injuries and have been, let's say, not elite with the injuries.
Yes, if I do remember correctly, you wrote about the defense and provided some statistics along those lines a few weeks ago. So, Jen, what needs to happen for the Mystics to make the playoffs?
Number one, they got to be healthy. And number two, they have to find that cohesion that I was talking about. You want to go into playoffs playing your best basketball. That's something that Mike Thibault said for years and years when he was the team's head coach. And Eric Thibault, his son, continues to repeat it this year in his first year as head coach. I mean, what a year for a first-year head coach, right? But that's a whole nother story. But the Mystics have to really use these last 8 games not only to get results, but to get the team feeling confident and connected going into the playoffs, so that they can, perform in a first round playoff series and hopefully get, a more advantageous seed for them, rather than, stumbling in as the 7 seed or the 8 seed, not feeling confident in who they are, and potentially having to go cross country to a Las Vegas or play another really elite team in New York.
And as we talked about in the last segment, how do the players returning from injury help this plan?
In every way possible. All of them are top level scorers. I think I saw a stat, I don't have the exact number, but something like the 400 players combined for like 40 points a game. That's insane. Shakira Austin and Ariel Atkins are also elite defenders, and Elena Delle is an underrated defender. So really they impact everything. And then they have the leadership. I think one thing that's kind of flown under the radar is, with Elena and Ariel out, you lose two of your most steadying presences on the court. And Natasha Cloud and Brittany Sykes have talked at length about this. Those two are kind of the firecrackers, to use their term, of the team. And they've had to be really conscious about their body language and not being too firecrackery, if that's a word, because sometimes, also in their words, it can make the whole team crazy. So they have had to try to modulate themselves to make up for the loss of leaders like Elena and Ariel, who are those naturally steadying presences and kind of counteract the more high energy players that they do have. So I think, getting them back is going to be huge. I mean, Natasha Cloud even said it the other day. She was like, man, I've really missed being able to just yell Kira when I get beat on defense and have her come over and help or block the shot. So, they're thrilled to have all those players back. And even if it's unsteady, even if, Shakira's resting a little bit, or we don't quite know whether Elena's in and out, they'll take 50% availability. They'll take 20% rusty. They'll take whatever they can get, because those players are so impactful individually and as a group.
And looking further ahead, even past the playoffs, last week, Ariel Atkins signed a contract extension. Why was this the right move for the Mystics, even as Atkins is just returning from an ankle injury?
Yeah, so first of all, on the injury front, this is Atkins' first serious injury in 6 years with the Mystics. So she is one of the most durable and reliable players that they have. So the timing, I think, is probably coincidental, other than perhaps she had more time to think about an extension while she wasn't playing. I'm not sure on that, but it could be connected in that way. But I don't think, the ankle injury even crossed their mind when they were thinking about whether or not to extend her. She's been reliable and frankly elite throughout her career in Washington. So, she spent her whole career in Washington. She wanted to stay. Mystics wanted her to stay. She is a top player in the league on both ends. She has been named to an all-defensive team every single season she's been in the league. She's the first player ever to do that in her first 5 seasons in the league. And she could get another one this year, though that stint on the injury list might end up costing her in those end-of-year awards votings. She's also really talented offensively. She's the Mystics franchise leader in career three-pointers made. She actually set that record the same day as she sprained her ankle. So, talk about double-edged sword right there. She's just a steadying presence, a talented player on both ends. I talked about her leadership, and then just, the culture piece. She is in every way, she is a foundational piece for the Mystics. They wanted to continue to build around her. And I don't say that in a way that implies that they don't want to build around anybody else. They signed her to a number that's slightly less than the regular maximum contract for next year, which may be a bargain, considering that I think another team would probably have been willing to give her a regular max. And it also still gives them options with Elena Delle and Natasha Cloud being free agents. The Mystics can still afford to pay those two, and also got Atkins done and can now, focus on those other two, which is probably good for Mike Thibault's head not exploding in free agency, with 3 of your stars being free agents at the same time. So in short, there's really no reason I can think of from the Mystics side that you would not want to do this extension. It is as close to a no-brainer as I can think of, and it is 2 years and $200,000 per year guaranteed for those who hadn't seen.
Thank you for all of your invaluable insights on such a range of topics today, and for bearing with me as I once again throw a wide variety of topics at you. What are you working on now? I'm sure there's quite a few stories in your queue.
Yeah, I am always working on a wide variety of things, so always happy to talk about a wide variety of things. As you mentioned earlier, I'll have something out shortly on the Mystics Hall of Fame ceremony. I'm also working on more about how the Mystics are reintegrating these injured stars as they get healthy. So look for that soonish. And then, for all the folks who follow me for Ivy League content, you can expect something probably in early September once a certain team does a certain summer adventure.
Thank you so much for joining me today, Jenn. Where can the people find you and your work?
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter, which is now actually called X, if you believe Elon Musk. You can find me there at Jenn Hatfield 1. That's Jenn with 2 N's. And yeah, that there. And then thenexthoops.com, of course, for all of your WNBA and women's basketball needs.
Thanks for making Locked On Women's Basketball your first listen every day. Everydayers, make sure to tune in this week for more from me, including a special recap of the 1976 Olympic team's induction into the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame with one of the members of that team, Gail Marquis.